That's awesome. I appreciate you, buddy. Okay, there we go. Okay, so sorry about that. Should have picture any second now. Let me know, Ethan, if you get back picture. All right, perfect. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. All right, so let's put that there for a moment. Hey fam, Swati Tukong Crap Pinik here, and I apologize about the delay getting everything started. For some reason, the microphone that I tested last night was working perfectly as it was, and then when I just tried to get everything going, it sadly was not wanting to work the audio. So unfortunately caused a delay in the stream, and I have started recording now, so this should be something that automatically posts on my channel after this. But again, this is all new to me, so we'll see how it goes. I do want to give a shout out to Ethan in the chat. He is one of the original members of the channel, or subscribers of the channel, and I want to thank you for joining when you did, Ethan, as well as Axel and John, probably my 3 original OGs. And if you're curious why I say hey fam and Swati Tuk Kong Krap, because I'm based in Thailand, Swati Tuk Kong Krap is how a male would say hello everyone, because hey fam doesn't make sense in Thai. So that's why I begin my videos, whether it's a live stream or a video after my intro graphics, with the hey fam and Swati Tuk Kong Krap. Since I'm based in Thailand, I want to give homage to the people in Thailand. All right, so this week's device is the Retroid Pocket 5 with its secondary screen add-on that they've created. And as I posited in the unboxing video, one of the reasons I wanted to create this was, well, not really create it, I guess, but why I wanted to do this device is because the big boys in this space, AYN and ANEO, both have dual screen devices coming. And I wanted to know whether it is something that makes sense to have it as a separate like this, where you can easily remove the secondary screen, but have the secondary screen when you want it to be there, or is it better to have it permanently attached to the device? So, I mean, obviously there's pros and cons to both situations, and I wanted to be able to see what it is to have something like this from the get-go, to know, again, when I'm using those dual screen devices, I can't remove the secondary screen. One of the nice things about this is this has a larger secondary screen, if you will, than any of the other devices. So ANEO will have a 5-inch 4:3 aspect ratio screen, whereas AYN is going to have a 3.92-inch screen that is almost a square, but not quite a square. So both have their own pros and cons. The AYN, while it will have a smaller secondary screen, will have an OLED panel, like this will have 2 OLEDs, whereas the ANEO will have a larger top screen at 7 inches rather than 6 inches for the AYN. It will have an LCD screen. So will that make a difference? I don't know. But both of these are the exact same screen because Retroid, when they developed this, they used the same screen that was already in this, a 5.5-inch 1080p OLED. Now, one of the things that I had been curious about as well is Adreno and AYN, as far as they had known when they first announced these, were having an issue because of Google, as far as we knew, where it was a limitation where you must have the same refresh rate on a dual screen device, which this would not be my first dual screen devices because I did use the Microsoft Duo 2. And I always loved having a dual screen, and I found that I used the two screens much more than I opened my current flip phone to be able to use multitasking in that regard. So I have missed having dual screens, so it'll be interesting how I interact with those devices whenever I have the chance here shortly. That said, as I mentioned, everyone thought it was a Android thing. So if one screen was 60 hertz or 60 frames per second, the other screen had to be as well. So while the other two devices had a higher refresh top screen, the AYN at 120 hertz and the Adreno has a 144 hertz screen, this is only 60, and their bottom screens were 60. So initially, one of the things that I was thinking is, well, these will end up having the same refresh rate if you're using both screens. But AYN has shown in a video that they were able to get their top screen at 120 hertz while still using the bottom screen at 60 hertz. I don't know what special voodoo did they do to be able to make that happen. I'm glad that they did. But again, that kind of takes away that argument. So again, it will be interesting. Now you'll see right now it's mirroring my screen. And it does that the vast majority of the time if you're using this. Now, one of the things you can do, for example, is I can say, press and hold on it, and then you'll see screen launch as an option. And I can click on screen launch, and then it says, do you want to load it on a global screen, which would be on both screens, the internal screen, which of course is the screen of the device itself, or the external screen. So I can say open Google Chrome here, and then it'll open Google Chrome, and you can see that's how it's doing it. And then I can say I always want the Google Play Store to open on the internal screen, so the next time I open it, and I can multitask that way. Of course, I have to kind of think ahead to either set the default for the browser, for example, to always be up top. I have to mirror it if I'm okay with that and do the global screen, or set it down to the bottom. And if I had it on the bottom last time, but now I want it up here, I have to do some extra steps. Not a big deal, just pointing out the extra steps behind it. Again, I have no idea how the new Thor from AYN or the Pocket DS from Adreno will operate in this manner because they are built-in screens. So I'm not sure yet. I haven't gotten my hands on them yet. But that's how this works. So if you were curious how we get it to work, that's how we get it to work. So then I have to close down each one individually. If I can figure out how to close this one, I've actually always just opened the dual screens. So this one is still a touch screen, so I guess I could try doing that to see if that gets rid of it. Yep. All right, that's probably the easiest way. I'm not sure why. Maybe I just wasn't triggering it well enough on the top screen there. So what I've found works best for me, and this is primarily because I have quite a large DS catalog, is to launch Drastic. And then Drastic takes a moment, and I can select load a new game. Sometimes it looks like it's going to stall, and it asks you to wait or close the app, which you may see here in just a moment. But I just tell it, wait. And that's because, again, I have a couple hundred DS games on here. I wouldn't recommend having 100 or so games on here for DS, but then when you do, then you get it to both screens. So you can see Drastic then loads it no problem. Now it looks like it's mirroring it, and that's perfectly fine. That is the expectation. So right now we have two viewers, Ethan and someone else. If one of you wants to suggest a DS game that I try, I'd be happy to to try it, whether it's on the screen now or let me know, and I will gladly look through my playlist to see if I have the DS game in question. And I know there's a bit of a delay, so I'll give you a moment to think about it and type it out. Oops. Nothing yet? Okay. Well, I'll give you a moment here, and one game that I've already done some testing on, still not the best at, but I do know that it works as we would want it to, would be Contra 4. You click on it, and then you click on Start Game. Now, by default, it's going to be loading the primary screen on the top and dual screens on the bottom. So they made it easy to be able to turn up and down the volume. There we go. So then I can click up here. I can tell it give me one screen, and now I have both screens working. Of course, if you want for some reason to have the gamepad up, you can have the gamepad up, but I don't want to see the gamepad, so I turn it off there. Lego Star Wars. All right. Here I'll just kind of show how this one looks to start with. And then we can go into, I think I messed that up there. Yeah, I always get used to, because I'm a PlayStation guy, and the bottom button, which is the X on PlayStation, launches for North American games, but for Nintendo, it's the A. Of course, this does feel a bit top heavy. It would feel less top heavy if I was using the pivot more, the screen pivoted in a different way, but since I'm having it face down to make it easier for you guys to be able to see. Okay. Again, I wouldn't recommend having as many of the same screens as I do, but, or I mean, as many ROMs as I do. So you can see it's going on the same screen now for some reason, so I can click on that and change it around. And should be able to flip it. Again, it works for me in my testing, but now I'm on camera and it doesn't want to work for me. I don't know why that is. Still getting used to the emulation for DS, so I do apologize. I'm not sure what's gonna annoy me there, but I can confirm that it was working for me, whereas having, oops, oh, nope. Okay, so I can click the button, and I am not doing very well. Gotta get used to not clicking it. And yes, you'll notice that the thumbsticks are wider than they were originally. It's because I did choose to put on a thumbstick pad that came with one of my previous devices. So yeah, That was not the best one that I could have chosen, but that's all right. Let's try change game. I have to double tap. And again, it is a bit more nerve-wracking trying to stream and talk at the same time. Yeah, it's funny how they look better, but they are the same screen. Maybe a brightness difference. One of the things is they were able to figure out the volume controls through the Action Center, but not the top screen's brightness, so you have to manually toggle it up and down. But it is officially the same display that's built into the device. But thanks for joining Brainbeat, one of my newest subs. I appreciate that. Let's see here. I think I have Lego Star Wars. It's been a while since, let's see. I only tested a few games. Let's see here. See how horribly I can do if I do find it. There we go. The complete saga. Boy, that's some crazy flickering. I'm hesitant to continue because it's so horrible. Hopefully it'll stop flickering. If not, I'm going to back out of it if the gameplay. Okay, there we go. So this is not one that I have tested out, so all right. So let me know between you guys that are on right now and anyone that's watching later on, what did you grow up with? Oh, interesting. Did you grow up watching Star Wars? If so, which Star Wars did you watch? Let me see if there's any better screen. Okay, there is. So, but why is it doing it that way? Like I say, during my testing, it didn't do that, and that's what's confusing me. Select screen layout. I am not sure. I had easily working where both screens were visible at the same time. And let me see. Now I feel weird because, like I say, it doesn't seem like I did any testing, but I promise I did. As you could see in my the game I just tried. And external screen is the top screen. And my mind is just blanking, probably because I'm honestly nervous. But the show must go on, as they say. Okay, let me just try. What did I do during my testing? It's staying pretty relatively decent. You can see even though it says FPS, it's giving you percentage. So it's sticking close to 100%. Not perfect, but you can see that the 100% there, hovering around it in the high 90s. So it's not perfect. Wish I could remember how I did it yesterday. Ah, there we go. And I think it's funny too because Brain, I believe you're in Australia, and Ethan is also in Australia. So the two people watching me are in Australia at the moment. Okay. Looks just the same, doesn't it? Actually, it kind of looks like Anbernic's leaked device as well, if you know what I mean. If you know, you know. So that'll be another one that I'll be buying this year. And yes, anyone that's watching this in the future, I've only received one review unit at this point. So every other device that I've reviewed at this point, and probably for the foreseeable future, was provided by my own bank account. Not the easiest hobby to get into, not the easiest channel to get into for creating content, because I have to always be buying new stuff since I'm reviewing them, and then I do a long-term review, which means I can't even sell it right away. But it is what it is. I want to help you guys make informed decisions, so I have to swallow my pride, so to speak, until I can get big enough to be worthy of a review unit. Let's see my negotiations. Definitely interesting flickering on the selection screens, but at least in app, those are moot. So yeah, not too bad. You do see some drops. It's usually around 97, 98% when it does drop. So, you know, maybe going from 60 to 55, 57 frames per second. So not the worst, but obviously not the best, which is why I wish that someone would create a device with a LTPO OLED like my Vivo X Fold 3 phone has, which can go from 1 hertz to 120 hertz. And the nice thing is it just automatically dynamically adjusts its frame rate based on the gameplay you're playing, kind of like VRR. So that makes it where, again, a game, if you do have some drop down in frames, it wouldn't be as noticeable because it would be at a quote unquote native type of frame rate due to the LTPO OLED. But for a 60 hertz panel, it does look, these do look pretty good. They would look better if they were like the Odin 2 Portal with a 120 hertz reframe, 120 hertz or 120 frames per second, but still look pretty good. So that is drastic. I'm going to well, I mean, you have to remember, it is trying to render both screens at the same time. And yes, it is not, I wouldn't say struggling, but it's not running at 100% buttery smooth. But you have to remember this is a Snapdragon 865. So the ironic thing is the Snapdragon 865 is much, much less powerful than the 8 Elite is. But right now, this can play PS2 and PS3. Well, maybe not PS2. I think it can brute force its way through PS2, but PS3 really relies on the software behind it all, the drivers. So this can actually perform PS3 games better than the 8 Elites can right now. But the expectation is that as they are working on it, I know that they've said that they're working on these for ANEO and AYN, so those will get better. And for example, the Thor, I'm getting the 8 Gen 2, which is highly optimized because again, the Portal 2, for example, or the 2 Portal. So that will perform even better because again, it's a couple generations ahead of this, and they've had a couple years of development over the 8 Elite. So in theory, at least at launch, the 8 Gen 2 that will be in my Thor will outperform in almost every game the 8 Elite. But soon as Qualcomm starts working on those drivers and their third-party driver support makers making those turnip drivers and the alike, then the 8 Elite will surpass it because it is a good generational leap based on its architecture. It's again, that's why though, because the 8 Elite is a different architecture than the 8 Gen 2 and 8 Gen 3. So that's why they're behind the 8 ball as far as driver support at the moment for these types of handhelds. Yeah, they got the 8 Gen 5 because they're calling it the 8 Gen 5 so that way it'll match the non-elite socks. And so it's supposed to be backwards compatible. But I haven't seen any videos of it being tested yet. And I don't have an 8 Elite device to test it on as far as a phone or anything else to go by. So until I get that, I can't qualify that if that's true or not. But we'll see. Again, it's moot for now because again, the Pocket DS from Aeneo and my Odin 3 both will have the 8 Elite, but they're not coming out until December-ish. So I won't be able to test it until they've probably been able to truly even get more work done. Now that Qualcomm knows that there's devices that are coming out specifically for retro gaming, I'm sure they're going to probably release access to more of the drivers, like the backwards compatible 8 Elite Gen 5 that they've supposedly released. Again, I haven't tested it yet, so I don't know, but I imagine it'll get better with time. Hi, Proud European. So we just tested Drastic, and of course, during my testing, I was able to get the top screen and bottom screen to be separated, but today during my video, I can't remember how I did it. So alas, it was kind of not as interesting as I would like type of demonstration, but we do have PS2, obviously. Now these will be mirroring the system because that's what this would do natively, but we can get rid of controllers and the alike. So I believe, let me see here. It's been a while since I played PlayStation 2. Okay. I don't need these. least in theory. So let's go ahead and actually, let me see here. See if I can't get my FPS to show. Again, sorry, I've been busy. I mean, you guys know I have a 19, almost 20-month-old baby and a full-time job. So, all right. So it's up here in the corner, or up here in the corner, depending on which screen you're looking at. I guess I could put it up here so you can see. Well, I've heard the Steam Deck for some reason makes the screen buzz even though there's no screen in the second, or no speaker in the secondary screen. But again, I've also seen a report that someone else's did not. Now, I don't have the one that's compatible for other devices. They do have two brackets that you can choose when you're buying it, or you can buy one. For example, this is for Retroid devices. Then you can have the other one that's designed for larger devices like the Steam Deck or the Odin 2 Portal, and you can buy the bracket separately. So then you can detach this and make it work for the others. But in theory, it does work. It's just from what I've seen, people getting nervous about it connecting to the Steam Deck. And it is just a mirror since it's PlayStation 2. Yeah. My wife, Jo, definitely. But she's much more understanding about my time than my son Dominic is. So at almost 20 months, he has no comprehension about giving dad time to do other things. Jo definitely understands, and I'm always appreciative of her. She did recently create her own channel for cooking shorts. So she saw me having so much fun editing videos and just being real. A long form video like I do Mondays and Fridays. I usually do my scripting after work, so I get off work at 6 Thai time, usually eat dinner and then script until 7:30, record 7 to 8, somewhere in there, and then I'm usually up till 12 to 2 o'clock in the morning to do the editing, and then I set it up to post when it's appropriate. So it is a long process. It's a labor of love. As I've mentioned in multiple of my videos, my first ever video was the first time I had ever edited any video. So I'm still learning stuff all the time. For example, Brainbeat taught me something new not too recently whenever he and I first started talking about YouTube Studio, and I appreciate that. And I know I can count on Ethan for generally catching things and letting me know as well. So I appreciate both of you. And I see that there's another third person that's joined. I don't know how if I can see which people are joined, but there we are, participants. Nope. Okay. Interesting. Like I say, this is all new to me, so it sure wants to take its time with this race training. Who remembers playing Burnout back in the day? I remember playing it and then being excited whenever they launched it on PlayStation 3, the updated version. So for who's watching, I'm curious, what was your first game console, whether handheld or home console? For me, my family had an Atari 2600. Of course, it wasn't new. We bought it used. And then shortly after that, my dad bought us a used NES. But my first game console that was mine was the Nintendo Virtual Boy. And then, of course, they didn't last very long. So my first game console that I actually got to enjoy and have lots of games for was the PlayStation 1. Sure takes a while to get started. But you have to remember this game was crazy for its time because there wasn't any loading screens. Look up to see a comment and look down to see a car coming right at me. And it's definitely interesting trying to keep the device in the screen. I don't know about you guys, but I think PlayStation 2 looks pretty darn good on it. All right. You know, I can see why some people, this is their favorite device of the year, especially for those that like smaller screens. A 5.5, it's funny to call a 5.5-inch screen a smaller screen, because I can tell you, once upon a time, I sold cell phones, and the idea any phone would get to 5.5 inches, most people thought was ludicrous. They're like, there's no way, no one would ever need a screen that big. Now, granted, it was a 16:9 screen when it first launched at 5.5 inches, and then Apple, of course, did their device, I believe, at 5.5 inches as well. But when that first came out, everybody's like, oh, you'll never need anything over 4.5 inches. Anything over 4.5 inches is crazy talk. Yeah. Meanwhile, now I have a foldable phone that has a 6.5-inch screen, and then I can open it up to an 8.03-inch screen. And I still wish it was bigger at times. All right, so I think that's good. Ah, Master System. Yeah, yeah. For us, that was the Genesis. And the first time I played the Wii, I actually lived in Chile. I was teaching English, and one of my friends, Rogers, had a Wii, I believe, or it could have been my other Venezuelan friend that had a Wii. It's been a while. It's been a long time since I thought about playing the Wii. So, and it has been a long time since I played this game. All right, I think I'm gonna give it a break for now. All right. Any other recommendations for a console or game that you'd like to see played? And your bro had a Dell Streak. Yeah, I remember that. Of course, our carriers didn't have it, but yeah, I think that thing was huge for the time. And it was 16:9. So, you know, if you think about it, the 16:9 screens, a 7-inch screen or even a 6-inch screen felt bigger than the 6.5-inch screen that I have today in my Vivo that I'm recording this on, because we have much wider aspect ratios. So they're a lot narrower, which kind of stinks because, you know, everything you watch is normally 16:9 content-wise, so then you get the bars, but, you know, they're trying to make it where they're more pocketable but still having bigger screens. Metal Gear Solid, Ethan, you know you're a good man. You're a really good man, buddy. All right, so let's see here. As you know, that's my favorite game of all time, and also the first game that I had on my PlayStation that I received. All right. And in case you didn't know, that's not the original controller that launched with the PlayStation 1. The PS1 actually launched with no analog sticks. The analog sticks were added to the need to be able to do that. I have some 3DS ROMs. I didn't put them on here. Um, I actually used up all of my internal storage for DS and PS2 and PS3 games, and then I used a microSD card for all of my classic systems like PS1 and below. Why are you? Of course it has. Tested you. Why are you being silly? All right, hang on one second, guys. RetroArch is wanting to be a pain in the butt. I don't know why, but I'll get it figured out here real quick. Where did I put it? Did I accidentally delete it? I didn't think I did. Well, let me see here. Okay, now let's try going back. Okay, just going to set it to global screen, and this guy to global screen should make it where it loads properly as expected. There we go. It depends on the PS3 games you're playing. You can get some PS3 games to actually load on it, and of course, I'm having a little bit of an issue. Let me just double check here. Yes, okay, give me 1 second here. Okay, give me 1 second here. I don't know what happened with my stuff, but I'm happy to get everything set up here real quick. Actually, I prefer Reon. All right. Give that a try. All right, let me just try opening RetroArch by itself here real quick. Actually, let me come over here. Okay. I like to say I had RetroArch. I don't know what's happened. Why it's no longer on? It was no longer on my device. I had to quickly reinstall it. Yeah, they are quite big. That's why I had to only put a couple on here. But yeah, there's a couple of guides. It's fairly, as long as you have a Blu-ray drive, it's not that bad. And sorry guys, for some reason, let me see here. I've gone crazy. Okay, so let me just try TechStation. Maybe that's why. Okay, I'm just gonna go about it this way to see if I can widescreen. Okay, just import my BIOS. Actually, wait, URCM, yeah. Okay, so I have to go to my BIOS. I have to go to my card, BIOS, and then I remember correctly, there we go. And then my game directories, go back, ROMs. And as you get accustomed to this hobby, if you're not accustomed to this hobby, you get used to what everything is. So PlayStation is PSX, which can be kind of confusing if you know anything about the PlayStation, as Japan had a Japanese exclusive PS2 that was a PSX. But that's all right. So we'll use this folder, allow it. Next. There we go. And for some reason, it doesn't catch all of my ROMs. Again, I don't understand. I've used these ROMs on other devices. I just haven't tested it with this device, but I'm not sure why that is. Okay. So we can see up here in the corner the frames per second, the resolution, of course, that it's trying to get up to. You can see the CPU usage, which I'm doing, I believe, a 5-scale integer upscaling. So that's why it actually looks fairly decent as well. How much RAM, video RAM is it using? How much of the GPU? I thought that's kind of interesting to show off. Yeah, it looked really cool back in the day. But it was way out of my budget. I was in high school working my first job, which would have been sacking groceries at an American grocery store called Albertsons. You just okay, let's try 4x resolution to see if that looks any different. More closely resembles the, should be filling up the screen at this point. Of course. Let's see here. As I mentioned, I don't know why it lost its mapping here, but let's see here. Okay, let's see. There we go. I remember playing Gradius on the SNES. Gradius, I've heard it being said both ways. These games were some of the best back in the day. These side-scrolling shoot 'em ups, shmups. Yeah, so aside from my lack of explanation of why I lost my RetroArch, and I must have just deleted it by accident, not thinking about it, to clear space, because as I mentioned, this comes with 128 gigabytes of storage, and I put my PS2 and PS3 games on it, and then on the internal storage because it's faster, and then I used for my retro consoles the MicroSD card, which is also 128 gigabyte card for those. Looked up and I apparently killed myself. I don't know. Yeah, let's play. I don't know if it'll load properly now. Let's see here. I can, yeah. Let's just change this. The PS3, well, the PS2 I remember waiting in line for. And, well, yeah, waited in line for the PS2, PS3, PS4, PS Vita. I didn't wait in line for the PSP, but I did get a PSP. And I didn't wait in line for the PS5, but I pre-ordered from Best Buy and from Walmart Canada because I was living in Canada at the time, and got both. So I ended up selling one of the PlayStation 3s at cost to a friend that I worked with that wanted it because I didn't need two consoles. I did get two PS4s at the time as I was married to a gamer at the time, and I still consider her a great friend, and we both waited in line so that way we could have a PlayStation 4 for the living room and one for the bedroom. Failed to load CD image. I don't know. Again, this is the same image I've used on other handhelds. So kind of interesting, but it is what it is. But yeah, so I've waited in line for most consoles, most PlayStation consoles. I've never owned an Xbox console, but I do have an Xbox Live account from the days of Windows Phone and Windows Mobile. But yeah, so anyways, PS2 was the first console I waited in line for. And I remember I went to Walmart, and Walmart was like, yeah, we're doing first come, first serve. Nobody's in line yet. And I asked if they had things like the keyboard and these games. And like, we can't sell them till midnight. And across the street was an EB Games. So I walked over there, and they're like, yeah, we have all the consoles pre-ordered by name, so you can't get a console, but we do have the keyboard, we do have games, so you can definitely get the games and everything you want today. So I went ahead and bought the games, walked back over to Walmart. Still nobody was in line, so I was thinking, okay, great. So they're like, there's no line. We'll announce where it is closer to midnight. So about 11:30, they decided to say, okay, come over to this section if you're waiting for the PlayStation 2 launch. And my dad had graciously let me go there since I was in high school. So I went over there, and there was like 5 people in line already, but they said they had like 20 consoles. So I was like, I'm sitting pretty. I'm going to get my PS2. I already have my games. I'm super excited. And then people started lining up, and people started lining up. And there were probably 50 or more people. And they started complaining that there was only like 20 consoles, and they're like, hey, we got here before midnight. And they're like, sorry, first come, first serve. I'm like, no, that's not fair. We got here before midnight. We deserve to try to get in a game console. And of course, us in line were like, what are you talking about? You should have gotten here earlier. So we started getting into an argument. The store manager came over and was like, fine, we'll do a raffle, and everybody take a number, and the first 20 or whatever it was will get the console, and everybody else will just have to wait. So fine, did the raffle, and of course I didn't get it. So I already had like 4 games, a second controller for a friend to come over, had a keyboard because I was excited about the keyboard functionality of the PlayStation 2, and then it was taken away. But yeah, so every chance I got whenever I'd go somewhere with my dad, I'd be like, hey, can we stop at Walmart, stop at Best Buy, stop at EB Games? And to his credit, he was always like, yeah, sure, son, we don't have anything going on since I'm the youngest in the family. So we would go, and sold out. And then right before Christmas, or right after Christmas, I guess it would have been, we were getting ready to pass by Best Buy, and I'm like, can we stop by Best Buy? So he's like, all right, let's stop by Best Buy. So I went and looked on the shelf, and I was like, oh, it's still not there. But I went to customer service and I was like, hey, do you guys happen to have any PS2s in the back, maybe that are left over from Christmas that nobody ended up buying or anything like that? And they were like, well, actually, this lady just brought back this unopened PlayStation 2 because she bought it for her son and he complained. He said, no, all my friends have a PS1. I want to have the same console as my friends. Get me a PS1. So she brought it back and exchanged it for a PS1. We tried telling her she didn't need to, but she did. So we have this unopened one. But even though it's unopened, since it was returned, we can get it to you for a little bit of a discount too. So I was like, yes, give me, give me, give me. So that's how I got my first PS2. Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always been a PlayStation guy since the original PlayStation. So I've always loved having the parallel sticks, and it felt odd for me having the offset sticks. Um, I know it sounds weird, but it's just what you get used to. You get used to having the sticks and playing games that way. And I know everybody says, oh, FPS is great. I don't play a lot of FPS. I like playing sports games and things like that. And for me, it just felt more natural having that. Now, of course, I use devices like the Odin 2 Portal that I have sitting on my printer behind me that has offset sticks, so I'm getting used to it. But I've still always preferred having parallel sticks just because that's what I'm used to. But both are great. Um, but yeah, so I've owned every North American released PlayStation console. I have two PS Vitas in my bedroom, one that was a Japanese exclusive third gen in lime green, and one that was a launch edition. I have a second gen PS3 because unfortunately Chile uses different power than the US, and I learned the hard way that the original PlayStation 3 didn't come with the modularity to go between 50 hertz and 60 hertz power cycles. So I fried my original launch PS3, but I have a second gen and I have a launch edition PS5 in my room that I brought with me from Canada to Thailand. Yeah, I know, Ethan. I wish I could have known who that kid was so I could thank him for being so ignorant that he didn't realize his PS2 could have played his PS1 games. But you know, it worked out for me, so I'm not going to complain. But yeah, couldn't believe my luck. She's like, actually, I was like, no. She's like, yeah, look, you can see it's still unopened, new in box. I'm like, that is so cool. Yes, I'll take that. For World of Warcraft, wow. That's funny. World of Warcraft, wow. Um, yeah, I've never played WoW. I've had lots of friends that have played WoW, but I've never gotten into the MMORPGs like WoW. I've always been more a sports guy, playing North American sports, American football. I've even tried Canadian football games. They're just not very good. Play basketball games, baseball games, but then I also like games like Metal Gear Solid. Um, so yeah, not a lot of RPGs, but I've played some FPS like Resistance and um, what was the FPS on PS2 launch that came out? Red Flag, or I see red in the name. Red Faction, I think it was, maybe Red Faction. I had that. That's one game that I bought and I beat it. But I haven't played a lot of FPS, so I'm not a COD or MW type of player, not Modern Warfare, not a Call of Duty type of guy. That's cool. Cool. Um, I don't know what game she was playing, but before there were clans, um, you could play online Resident Evil 5, and my ex-wife as I mentioned, we waited in the line for a PS4 to launch. And when I first met her, she thought PlayStation and video games were stupid. And then I gave her the demo of Resident Evil 5 before it came out, and she fell in love with it. So for her birthday, I got her Resident Evil 5. And that was February, end of February is when her birthday is. And by the time we moved at the end of June that year, she'd played over 500 hours. So she had already gotten her own group that was basically like a clan, and she would go online, and even though she was this little Ecuadorian girl, you'd hear her, "Hey, Ricky, you over there to the left," and "Hey, you, Scotty, over there," and like commanding them like a general. So funny. But she met her current husband, who's a great guy as well. Met him playing a game, and they were a clan, so they met on a Discord server for the clan. That's awesome. Like I say, I've never played it, but I had a number of friends that did play it. Okay. So the PS3 emulator is RPCS X. It used to be RPCS 3, but they wanted to migrate it away from RPCS 3 because they wanted to be able to eventually also, I believe, launch PS4, if I remember correctly. And the only way, obviously, to do that in a logistical way would be to move away from that nomenclature. So they forked their own software from RPCS 3 and created RPCS X to be able to do so. Of course, now I'm updating and downloading an update, so let's try to leave that hopefully running in the background. Let's go back to ESDE. Now, I've mentioned this in a number of my videos. ESDE, see if I can't make this brighter here for you. I think that would be the better way to go, or light darker. Let's see here. Maybe darker. Yeah, darker. Okay, beautiful. So as long as it stays in focus. So ESDE, as I've mentioned, one of the things that they do is they do a Patreon because they tried being in the Google Play Store, and even though they come with no emulators, they're just a pure front end, Google turned them down. So they have a Patreon page that I believe is $6, $5.99 US. It's a one-time payment to be part of their Patreon, and then you can cancel your subscription. That automatically puts you on their, giving you access to their Discord server, but also to their email list. So even though you cancel it, anytime there's a new update to ESDE, they will send you an email saying, hey, there's a new update to ESDE. Click here for the APK to download it. So for me, again, I think it's the best. I still want to try a new one that I found out about recently. That's also a one-time charge, but is on the Google Play Store. But ESDE, I think, is the best because you get the, I guess, easier nature of setting things up. By that, I mean, you can scrape for all whichever devices you want, and it automatically loads all of your devices. Most other front ends, you have to tell it, I want to do the Atari Jaguar. Where's the folder for the Atari Jaguar? And point it there. And then where's this? That, you know, point each individual console. Whereas ESDE automatically finds it. You just tell it the broader folder, here's all of my ROMs, and it finds and organizes your PSP, your PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Sega Genesis, Dreamcast, all of that for you. Sorry about the bright screen above. I only have 2 USB-A ports. I'm going to have to probably get a hub so I can use my other light so I can turn off the lights in my office because I think it's too bright. If you guys want me to try to turn off the lights, let me know. But no worries, Brainbeat. Thanks for joining in and my old man stories. Have a good night. Ethan, if you're still here, bud, let's see here. Yeah, it looks like you are. You want to see if it looks better with the lights off in the office? I know there's a bit of a delay, so we'll give it a moment for Ethan to catch up. Well, I'm 41, Brain Pete. All right, let's see here. There's my lovely Vivo. See how it looks. Not too bad. But why RetroArch wants to be a pain in the butt, I am not sure. Like I say, usually it doesn't give me this issue, but I think because I just had to install it on the fly. Okay, and then let me see if I can increase the brightness again to compensate for the darker room. There we go. Yeah, so it's just an up and down button over here, as you can see. One of the nice things is they do offer, since you are using the USB-C port of the device, so they have pass-through USB-C here, so you can plug this in and it'll charge your device. So at least there's that. You can still charge your device, just not through the devices itself port. Let's see here. See if I can get this to load. Well, that's a reflective screen. Let me hide myself. Again, I don't even remember deleting my instance of RetroArch. Let me see here. Game Boy Advance. Let's just try that, see how that works. So, I mean, one of the things that's, obvious is with this hobby, if you're going to get more powerful devices with Android-based devices versus Linux-based devices. There's no doubt about that. But there's the ease of use factor that goes away by having these. So okay, let's see if it remembers. Oh, come on, don't tell me a new update is killing my device. This was one of my favorite games as a kid. One of my friends, his name was Steve. He and I used to play Tecmo Bowl, Super Tecmo Bowl on the original Nintendo quite a bit. So this is something, again, I could have sworn I've tested it already, but when you're loading PS3 games for the first time, and maybe because I've done an update, you have to compile all of these, so it takes time. And it's very strange because some games that you would think would take forever to compile really quickly. Some of the games that you think would be smaller like this could take longer to compile the first time you play it. And again, it might be because I just updated it that's wanting to recompile everything. But after you do it the first time, then the games themselves load more quickly because it's already kind of created a cache file that it can quickly load these compiled modules to quickly load those PlayStation 3 games. But I still have this on my PlayStation 3 up in my bedroom. And I always enjoyed this game because you can play with it with PS3 modern graphics, or you can push a button and it'll toggle it to NES graphics. So I appreciate that they gave us that flexibility back then. But this is a good little demonstration of PlayStation 3. It says estimated time remaining 50 seconds, so let's see how accurate that is. There we go. You can see these look really sharp, these OLED panels. 5.5-inch 1080p. And I said it in one of my previous videos, but it's so true. I remember back in the PS3 era, you could buy a 42-inch TV that was 720p. And they're like, nobody would ever need a TV that's really 1080p. You'll never see that type of resolution sitting on your sofa. And now we need a 1080p on a 5.5-inch screen. Compiling PPU modules. Yeah, well, it's really sharpened in on its own case there, Vivo. And you can see the flicker from the radar trying to figure out how to do the autofocus, what it wants to autofocus on. The screen it gets really confused by. So it's focusing in on itself, making the screen itself blurry. It's kind of funny how cameras work like that. Of course, now it's wanting to take its time even more. I don't know if this is a, well, there we go, PlayStation Network. I think that's why maybe BrainBeat was thinking the top screen looked better, is the bottom screen's brighter, so it makes it harder for the camera to compensate. Man, choose your team. I don't know if you, Ethan, have ever watched American football or anyone that's watching later on, but I'd love to hear who are people's favorite teams. My favorite team has always been Dallas. So we'll do that. You can choose the weather. Let's see here. Let's make it interesting. Let's do snowy. Whoa, that's some craziness. So unfortunately, PS3 is not perfect. There we go. Let's do performance overlay. So here's the graphics I grew up playing on the original Nintendo. So let's go, and you can change it back. I am not sure it's recognizing my button presses. Did I lose something? With this update? Because I had my controller set up. It is possible that the update made it less compatible with the 865. I don't know why they would have done that, but may have. Now, just to give you a quick tour while I'm waiting on that a bit. So I have a clear shell for this, and you can see this back is kind of a gray color. So the reason for that is I actually will be releasing on Friday a accessories video, and this accessories video, one of the things is I got a clear back for this. So I wanted it to match this because I bought them at the same time. So I'll be installing that on the video. And one of the nice things I do like about this over the AYN is while it's glass front like the AYN Odin 2 Portal, the AYN only had glass covering the screen itself, so you could actually fill the lip of the glass for that, whereas this screen protector actually covers all the glass. So I actually kind of like that. And since this is kind of flat on the bottom, should make it a little bit more curved. But it's not all in all a bad feeling device. I would like a little bit bigger grips, but not bad. And then next week, what I'll be doing is I'll be creating on Monday my dream device. And then on Friday, I'll do my short-term review next week for this device. But as Ethan, you already know, I received this week, actually today. This is the new Anbernic RG476H. And I can mention it on a stream for the Retroid because, again, I'm paying for these myself. So it's not like I have an agreement with Retroid to only talk about Retroid type devices, which is why you're hearing me talk about other devices. So my next device will be that brand new Anbernic RG476H. So if you're curious what that means, RG means retro game. The first two numbers is going to be based on the screen size. So 4.7 means a 4.7 inch screen. 6 means their 6th generation SoC combination, which is the T820. And then the H means that it's a horizontal form factor versus if it was a V, it would be a vertical format. So that's what they use for their naming convention over at Anbernic, which gives a lot of different devices having something similar. Of course, there are exceptions like that. RG Slide, which is still retro game and slide. They just decided not to include the screen size, or I call it the 4.7 slide or 4.76 slide, for example. Yeah, looks like I froze my PlayStation 3. So we'll go ahead and close out of the PlayStation 3, but you can see it is definitely playable. It's going to be a bit glitchy because it is one of the newest forms of emulation on Android. So again, RPCSX, you can go to their website and download RPCSX if you have PlayStation 3 ROMs. RetroArch includes most of the consoles that you would want, or most of the emulators you'd want through here. So let's see here. Yeah, so I know that's my card. So you can navigate around, import content. Scan a directory. You want it to be good, so scan this directory. Let it find all the games. You can see I have almost 8,000 games on here, so it's going to take a bit of time. Let that, I think it'll still run in the background, so we'll let that run in the background. So yes, you can play some basic, and I do mean some basic, Switch games on here. You can play Wii U on here. Well, again, one of the nice things is if you have Wii U ROMs, you can also set it up like I was playing Drastic, the DS games on it, so you could have the main screen up top and then the secondary controller screen down at the bottom to be splitting your screen. So there's a number of ways you can do it. And the nice thing is because this is full Android, you do have the full Google Play Store. So because you have the full Google Play Store, of course, anything you want, like if you're a Genshin Impact lover, by all means put Genshin Impact on here. If you're a want to watch Netflix on here, put Netflix on here. And you know, the nice thing that I always loved about my Microsoft Duo 2 was having the dual screens, because what I would do is, yes, it was a clamshell like this, so I would of course turn it this way, but then I would have Netflix or YouTube playing on the top screen, the screen, whichever one I chose to make the top screen, and then I would have a website, like my favorite website to read, or whatever. I'd have that down here, or you know, again, have a video going here and a game down here. So you can do that absolutely on here. There's no issue doing that with this console. So I appreciate that we get that flexibility by having these screens. Okay. Give me 1 second here. No, RP5, ROMs, and then we want promise. After this, I will quadruple check everything is loaded the way I want it to be loaded before my next live streams. I thought I had everything squared away, but I made a mistake. So all right, so yeah, I guess I have some work to do on that front, and I apologize. I will take ownership of that. I was raised to take ownership of things when you make mistakes. So yes, but yeah, you have Citra. You can get Dolphin on here. So you can get all of those. Again, you can have all of your retro consoles over here too. So that's one thing that I really love about having the access to everything here is it's really an all-in-one console for the vast majority of us. And yeah, this is more than powerful for the average user. Now, of course, if you want PlayStation 3 or anything like that, this can play it, but obviously something like the 8 Gen 2 AYN Odin 2 Portal will play it better. Okay. I wonder, yeah, they could have definitely done an RG476S for the slide, but I guess maybe they thought it's a one and done, so they didn't. But yeah, that as per their naming convention, that would have made more sense, Ethan. I fully agree with you. Yeah, I can see why it would be growing in Oz, the NFL, because a number of players have gone to play college football and gone on to the NFL. So it's probably a pride thing knowing that you have some Aussies over there. So you want to watch them, and then consequently you start paying attention to it and seeing the differences between Aussie rules football and American football, which obviously there's quite a few. Because in my opinion, I think Aussie rules is closer to rugby as far as a lot of the different rules, because American football and Canadian football share more in common, having the structure play kind of structure with a certain number of downs before you give the ball to the other team if you don't proceed a certain distance. Whereas Aussie rules is a bit closer to rugby, obviously not rugby, but closer. Again, just the comparative. So yeah, it's loading all of those games. So again, I apologize. I don't know what happened there. But the nice thing is the 865 is more than powerful enough if you want to play Super Nintendo, for example, and playing Super Nintendo, you want to have a CRT beam shader on here to give it a CRT look. You can absolutely play Super Mario World and make it look like it came from an original CRT TV to give the original game developer's intent more closely matched. Because these OLED and even top of the line IPS displays, they create a completely smooth image. And that's not how they intended it. When they designed NES and SNES games, and even Sega Genesis games, they created it with the knowledge of how the TV systems worked at that time at displaying pictures and used that to their advantage. So when you're actually viewing a Super Nintendo or an NES game on one of the modern displays without a shader on it, you actually don't see the game how they intended you to see the game. So adding like a CRT beam shader gives you that kind of look, that a representative look of how they actually intended those consoles to look. So I don't know if you knew that, but that's one of the reasons that you'd want this over, for example, the similarly sized, recently reviewed K56. The K56 is less powerful than this. It also has a 5.5-inch screen and is more comfortable to hold. I'll give it, the ergonomics on it are a little bit better than what this is. So this isn't bad, but I would say the K56 had better ergo. But this can handle those shaders, which can be more demanding on the CPU. So something to keep in mind. And you can see, I mean, I've been having it download things and everything, and we've gone from 95 to 65% during this. Because again, what I'm doing is pretty demanding on it, actually trying to extract all of this information. So yeah, well, it's 2000 or 2,323 out of 10,266. Yeah, so a lot of games on here. But yeah, I believe I heard there's a game going to be in Melbourne next year. They already play a game a year in London. They used to play a preseason game, the NFL, in Mexico. I don't think they still do that, but they play at least one. I believe they're going to 2 games in London a year, which is interesting because there used to be an NFL Europe. I don't know if you knew that, but there used to be an NFL Europe, and the NFL Europe used to be kind of a development league for the NFL, but they had, I think, like 8 teams in Europe. So kind of interesting that they're playing regular season games there now. And good, I mean, yeah, good for Aussies to see it. It's always good to be exposed to new things. Ah, don't do that. Oh man. Sometimes you just have to be more patient. This is why I don't usually use RetroArch as my front end. You can use it as your back end, but using it as your front end, it is a bit more clunky than the others, but it is free. So, there's that. If you don't want to pay for the more expensive ones, you can absolutely not pay for ESDE or Beacon is the one I want to try that I was talking about earlier that has a one-time charge. That is in the Play Store. I want to try that, even though it kind of has one of my least favorite things, and that's where, again, if I want to load a PlayStation ROMs, I have to tell it, load PlayStation ROMs. Here are the PlayStation ROMs. And then I want to load SNES, I have to say, I want to download SNES. Here's SNES, versus this finds it all, and as does ESDE. That's why they work so well together. So RetroArch can be your front end and back end, and it is free. So by all means, you can do that. You can even scrape box art. So it is a very capable back end and front end. It is. Again, it's just not my preference. That doesn't mean that it's bad, because it's definitely not bad, but it's just, again, my preference. Anyway. So you can see I'm downloading, basically, the nice thing about RetroArch is it does have a bunch of emulators that you can download directly from it. So I appreciate that we have all of that. You just have to figure out which ones you want. Let's try that. Commodore 64, get a couple of those. And I mean, of course, you can always go back in and download these. So if you have some old DOS games, as a kid, we actually had a computer with DOS that had Windows 3.5 in it. So it didn't even load to Windows whenever you first turned it on. It would load into DOS, and you'd have to tell it to boot into Windows. And then we'd use the arrow key to move around. But yeah, so I look up and I see your message, Ethan, and yeah, it was in the late 90s. There was a famous quarterback that got his start in NFL Europe and went on to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback named Kurt Warner. The reason I know that is at the time I lived in Iowa, and Kurt Warner was from Iowa, so they were so proud that their homegrown boy went from a small university, got his chance to develop in NFL Europe, and then got signed by an NFL team, and that he got signed to be the backup. He wasn't going to be the starter, but the St. Louis Rams at the time, now the LA Rams, but at the time the St. Louis Rams quarterback they had signed to be their starter was named Trent Green. I believe he'd played for Washington before, the team that was known as the Redskins at the time. And not the Seahawks, not the Seattle, but Washington, D.C. And so St. Louis had signed him, and during the preseason, the guy went low and hit him in the knee, and he tore the knee ligaments and had to miss the entire season because he got hit during the preseason. And Kurt Warner came in, and that year won the Super Bowl, his first year as a starter. So yeah, you can see that's all loading, good stuff. And I'm talking about all kinds of crazy stuff during the live stream, as you can expect. But yeah, they had Cologne, Germany. I think Germany had a couple different teams. I believe Berlin had a team. London had a team, if I remember correctly. Again, the late 90s. So, I'm thinking back 25 years ago. to memories I haven't thought of since then. So bear with me and my horrible memory. Mm. 3DS Citra, DS. I like to have a couple just in case. Game Boy Game GBA. I think this is where I went wrong, is when I downloaded it, because again, I didn't think about it. I didn't come in here real quick to download the emulators. So I guess you're getting a bit of a setup process. Some people go through and just click on all of the cores, the emulators. That's what they call it. An emulator is a core, because it's not going to hurt anything. Just give you more. So if one doesn't fully function, you can switch to another core without needing internet access at that point. That one's probably the best one. So have you ever used RetroArch, Ethan? And then this is slide. So there's two main ROMs. While I'm waiting for you to answer there. If you're downloading Sega Saturn, if you have Sega Saturn ROMs, there's the Beetle core and Yaba Sanshiro. Beetle is more hardware demanding, but is more accurate. Yaba Sanshiro is less demanding, but is less accurate. So if you have a device like an 865 or above, you'd probably want to try the Beetle core. Something below that, you'd probably want to go with the Yaba Sanshiro. But that's how you can get Sega Saturn games to play, depending on which hardware you're on. All right. So yeah, like I say, RetroArch, you just Google their website, RetroArch, and you can download it for free on PC or on Android or anything really. Now the thing is ESDE is free on Windows. So if you have a Windows PC that you want to game on and you have a controller that you can connect to it, you can download ESDE and RetroArch to be your front end and back end tandem. You absolutely can. The thing to think about, though, like I say, is it's free on Windows. So if you do that, great. Maybe put in a MicroSD card into your computer and load all your ROM, or you create the RetroArch. You put RetroArch on there. You put and load it up for the first time and download all of your cores. You download all of your emulators and then open up ESDE. Let it create all of your folders for you, and then transfer your games in. You can do that, and then it'll work. Those ROMs will work on an Android device, on a Linux device that uses Emulation Station, Desktop Edition, ESDE, and RetroArch and its backend, Linux-based devices. All of that would work. The thing to remember, though, is ESDE is free on Windows, but you'll have to have that one-time payment for the Patreon to have the authentic version from them. And the reason they do that is because they are putting most of their effort in developing the Android side of things. So the Windows side isn't getting as many updates as the Android side or the Linux side. They're getting less updates because they're more stable, they're more mature. So you're helping them continue to be able to be independent developers and developing the Android by doing that one-time Patreon fee. So could you get around it and go to an APK site? Yes. But for me, I always like to provide the legit ways to do it and the ways that helps the people the most. For example, again, go to their Patreon and subscribe. I've never even spoken to them, but that'd be my recommendation because you're supporting the future development of the platform with your $6 US one time. That's not much money. But the same thing with this guy here, this Anbernic. I prefer to go through Anbernic directly to buy this. Why? Because I know AliExpress is going to sell it and they're going to sell it for the same price on AliExpress because Anbernic doesn't want to limit your buying options. And I appreciate that. But let's be honest, AliExpress is taking a commission on each unit sold. So I would rather give their payment system, whoever it is, Stripe or whoever, I would rather give them a small commission and then the majority of it to Anbernic for creating this device, or AYN if I can, because that way they get the most profits. And to me, that's my way of saying thank you for making a great device. Please continue developing new devices, or in the case of ESDE, continue developing the software, making it awesome. So one of their recent things is they've made it where ESDE will properly format for vertical screens, like on my Magic X 040 that I reviewed a few months ago. I think it is 1 or 2 months ago now. So they're continuing to optimize things and make things better. So again, for me, I would prefer to back up those developers, and that's why I prefer to do it that way. Again, I've never spoken to those developers, just my personal preference. And if you don't feel like that, if you feel like you would rather just go to the APK site, that's your, that's your decision, and I respect it. Okay. All right. I'm afraid to do that because I want it to continue loading games. I probably won't, but you can change the look and feel of it. So like I say, you can get it to scrape and give you box arts. So this can be your front end and back end if you want. You can even choose a secondary thumbnail if you want. You can have it upscale it. You can do all kinds of things. So I appreciate how smooth this is. And I can change the color theme if I want to change the color theme. Let's see here. Cutie Red. That's a great name. Cutie Red. And red is my favorite color. So there you go. I can change my appearance to be Cutie Red. On-screen overlay. You can choose your on-screen overlay. Like, they give you all kinds of awesome abilities in here. You can just play around with these to learn the system. The thing to remember is just don't be afraid. You can always delete it and reinstall it if somehow you did some type of setting and you broke it. You can absolutely do that. So don't be afraid to just goof around and try stuff and say, hey, I wonder what this does if I toggle this on. Now, if I was not afraid to lose stuff, because I know, for example, I prefer XMB, which is the PlayStation 3 loadout. For it to actually take effect, you'll see it says restart required. So I won't actually do that until later on. Well, you know, you only live once, right? So let me just show that. Oop. Of course, I just lost all the games I was loading, but that's all right. So now it's saying, oh, you want to do that. See, now it looks like a PlayStation 3. How cool is that? Of course, I lost a lot of things, but hey, let's see here. Did I? Yeah, I think that would work. There we go. How about a little GameCube? Of course, it's just showing on both, but that's the nice thing though, is, you know, if I wanted to, I could tell it to, you know, only be launching this on the top screen. So I could face it, you know, have it at a comfortable viewing angle for playing, but still have something else here, like a game walkthrough if I want to, with no issues, because you do get that flexibility. Now, they haven't figured out the volume between the two screens like AYN has, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with something sooner rather than later. I better stop that there before I get taken down. By the finest folks in the world, of course. But so yeah, I can even change this from being a blue color to red if I wanted to. So don't be afraid to play around. That's the best way to get familiar with anything, in my opinion, is to play around. So let's see here, input. I hope that I don't get any type of strike for that, but we'll find out. So you can choose your drivers here. Video. Vulkan is usually better. And the nice thing is you can do retro achievements. So I don't know if you're familiar with retro achievements, but retro achievements are basically like PlayStation achievements or trophies, Xbox achievements, but they've done them for thousands of retro games across all different generations. So you can create, if you Google retro achievements, you can create an account, and then you can turn it on, put in your username and password from that website. And anytime you play a game, you're able to get it to give you like an achievement icon, and you can see what achievements you've achieved, but just like on the PlayStation, but in this case, top left, so it'd come up here saying you've unlocked this achievement. I think it's really cool that they've done that because, again, gives people kind of a intrinsic motivation like trophies and achievements do on PlayStation and Xbox, but for retro games like Super Mario Brothers on NES has retro achievements. So you can absolutely have some fun doing that kind of stuff. Turn off hardcore mode. Yeah, give me some badges. You can have it give you an unlock sound when you get an achievement. So I love that we get all these types of options. And it tells you what things do and what they don't do. So if you're not familiar with it all, no big deal. Would you like to take it a screenshot whenever you achieve it? So the nice thing is, because this is online based, achievements are online based, retro achievements. If you have an online device like this, like the RG slide, like the AYN Odin 2 portal, the AYN Thor that's about to come up, their dual screen device. All of those are online devices, so you can absolutely have RetroArch and then sign into your retro achievements, and they'll carry over device to device. And if you put all of your games on a microSD card, all of your progress and everything will carry over from device to device as well. So that's the benefit of getting a 256 gig card or larger, depending on if you want PS3 and whatnot games. And put all of your games on that card, because then you can just, like say, download RetroArch and download all of your cores, and then download ESDE and put in your microSD card and tell it to find your games, where to find your BIOS that's on your ROMs and everything, and then boop, all of your history, everything is there on your microSD card. Of course, I'd recommend backing it up on your computer every so often, so if heaven forbid your good quality microSD card failed, you'd have a backup, but for your saves. Now you can also do cloud saves, and that's another cool thing you can absolutely do. You can also set it up to do cloud saves. So again, even without the same microSD card, you could log into that and it'll pick up where you left off on different games on different consoles. So really cool stuff, all possible if you dig into the system and play around. So I can't say it enough. Don't be afraid to play around. But I've been going for almost 2 hours, even after the crazy start. So I did get PS3 loading with RPCSX4 or RPCSX, of course, but it was a bit glitchy, as you could see. But it would have worked itself out, I think, just fine if I wasn't toggling between old school look and new school look. And we did get the DS working with Drastic, where we had the screens working. Again, I tested it yesterday and had no problem having the primary on top and the secondary on the bottom. So I apologize that I wasn't able to get it work tonight. I think it's just my nervousness causing my mind to get clouded up a bit. I'll endeavor to do better. And, you know, since I am not doing the final review for this until next Friday, if you want another live stream with me having everything squared away so we can properly test games, let me know. And also let me know some other games that you'd like to see tested, whether it's DS. I'll be happy to put on some 3DS games to give them a try on here. You know, again, I have to be careful, and I knew it whenever I clicked on it for the GameCube game, and I hope that they don't try to strike me, my video. If I do, I'll have to take down the stream. But hopefully that's the worst that happens. But again, I don't know yet. Hopefully nothing happens. Hopefully I'm too small to even be on their radar. But like I said, I'm happy to give these a try, and also to answer any other questions that you might have about the process. So before I go, yeah, I know there's a bit of a lag, so I'll give you a moment here. If there's anybody still here, but I don't think there is. So, all right. It said you're not here anymore, Ethan, so I'm kind of surprised, but I'm glad you're here. Okay, great. So yeah, let me know down in the comment section below, or, you know, we're legit friends as well, even though we've never met in person. So if you think of a console, whatever, let me know. Like I say, one of the nice things is this uses the same analog sticks that the AYN Odin 2 portal has, and that the new Odin 3 will have, and the Aeneo Pocket DS and the Aeneo Conquer Pocket Fit will have. So that's why I reached out to the guys at Sakura Retro Modding on Etsy, and I will be getting their stick collection as well as face buttons for the Odin 2 Portal, since it is my favorite device of the year. It's not a paid sponsorship from them. They didn't ask for anything in return, just to test it and talk about it if I like their product. So I'm hoping that I'll get their package tomorrow. It looks like I should be able to get it tomorrow, so I can include it with my accessories video for Friday, which means tomorrow night I have to work late. But that's okay. You guys are worth it. And then I'll, of course, talk about it during the stream on next Wednesday. But like I say, let me know down here in the comment section below, or which would probably be ideal. You know, engagement is always a good thing. Let me know what you want to see. And like I say, I hope to show off Sakura's retro modding sticks and buttons because their stuff looks top notch. I'm really excited about it. And either way, I'll show it off during my best of or my dream device on Monday. And then I'll also be making, like say, the review video Friday, and I'll do another stream on next Wednesday for this. So let me know what else I can do to help you make an informed decision, and also help me make an informed decision about the rating for this, because again, it's unique because, you know, the other devices are permanently attached, whereas this is quickly detached and off you go, you know. So it has its merits for having it set up in this way, but the other devices also have their merits for having it permanently attached. I'm still on the fence. I'm not sure how I'm going to rate this device. It's a well-made device, you know, absolutely. It looks great. I love the glass front. I know it's divisive, the front, but I love that. And, you know, I love my Skittles buttons. So I had to get this color because they have the Skittles buttons. The D-pad, you know, is good. I don't know if you can hear it. A little, you know, it's clicky, and mouse clicky, clicky clacky. But about the same as the AYN Odin 2 Portal. The speakers get decent, but I'll be honest, the TrimUI Brick Hammer has better speakers than this does. The only two devices that have a better set of speakers than the TrimUI Brick Hammer that I have reviewed this year is the AYN Odin 2 Portal and the ROG Ally X. And it's close, which really blows my mind for a sub $100 Game Boy clone without analog sticks, but TrimUI put some incredible speakers in it. So that game, like playing the Castlevania game I did in its video, doesn't sound anywhere near as rich as on it as it does on this device. This device doesn't sound as good playing that Castlevania game because it has some bass to it, and it can actually play a little bit of bass, whereas this one kind of misses the bass. So I'm still, like I say, trying to decide what this will be rated. So I'm happy to do the other live stream so we can figure out more games to play. And let me know if you want to have it be freeformed like this video has been, or if you would rather have more of a structure. Like I say, this is my first one, so I don't know. Do we want freeform where you guys are just spitting out games? Hopefully I'll have more people attend the next one when you guys are just saying, hey, try this game, hey, try this game. Or do we create, or do I create a structure where I say first 10 minutes is DS, give me all your DS games. Next 10 minutes is PS1 or PS2. Give me some games and have some structure. So that's all up in the air. As I mentioned, I'm not perfect, but I want to be better on each video for you guys, because that's what this channel is for you guys to be able to be exposed to different handhelds and to have a perspective of someone that's like you. You know, I'm not someone that's been doing this since 2005 or 2020. You know, I don't have 5 years of experience editing videos and have a great relationship with these companies yet. I'm trying to build it, obviously, but as of now, I've only spoken to a couple companies for more than, hey, reach out to this company or this department, and then crickets. Luckily, TrimUI wasn't that way, and luckily, the guys at Sakura Retro Modding weren't like that either. They were willing to talk to me and help me by providing review unit or review accessories at no cost to me and no expectations of other than to talk about their product. So, I hope that continues to happen. But in the meantime, regardless, even if I build up that great relationship that the other big guys have, I always want this to be about you and help you make informed decisions. So let me know what makes sense to you, free flow or structure, and again, what games you want to see on what console. And I will test every single one of them before next Wednesday so I can actually have those games lined up and know that they're ready to go for you. All right. Well, I appreciate your opinion, Ethan. I'll look forward to hopefully other people that watch the stream later's opinion. And with that said, I'm going to say good night to you. It's a little past 9 here, so it's about quarter after 9 o'clock in the evening here. So it must be even later for you in Oz. I believe you're a few hours ahead of me. So I guess I'll end it the same way that I end my regular videos. Until next time, this has been P-Nick.